There are ways to disagree respectfully in a way that shows that you might be slightly ignorant on the subject and need to learn more, or that you're struggling to grasp with how something might be, racist, sexist, or homophobic. People often fail to acknowledge that differences in opinion on reproductive rights, sexuality, and race result in one person having their rights stripped away. When you disagree on equal humanity, that is problematic and oppressive. If you disagree on a favorite type of food, that's harmless. It's easy to disagree on facts, slightly challenging to disagree on values, but horrible to disagree on equal humanity. Marginalized groups are more likely to feel that you're arguing about equal humanity because they can see how it directly impacts them. But privileged groups are less likely to see it this way, and they might think that it's a fact or a policy conversation. If you have a disagreement with someone where they're arguing that your opinions are harmful, try to see it from their perspective. Empathize with their experiences and identity and how these policies directly impact their lives. It's not just a difference of opinions, it's a difference of morals. But only one side knows that the conversation is immoral because that side has more to lose. One great suggestion from this book was at the outset of a conversation, say, "To me, this is a policy debate, but I see how it could be deeply personal to you, and I'll do my best to respect that reality when sharing my views." They also suggest saying, "I think that we're discussing policies, but do you think that this discussion is more than that as someone whose life might be directly impacted by it?" In 2020, a group of public figures talked about cancel culture in relation to identity and equity conversations and have cited that it leads to intolerance, a stifling atmosphere, and public shame and ostracization. But this fails to take into account the actual people that are hurt by not trying to evolve our societal norms on these topics, and this focuses more on differences than commonalities. If they had tried to find more common ground where they acknowledged that conversations still needed to be had in order to welcome growth and promote equity, then they claimed outright cancel culture is toxic, this might have been better received. As opposed to just directly calling out canceling others and calling it censorship and shaming. Try to focus more on how you can see things from the other person's perspective and try to find the commonalities, and maybe your words will not come off as harsh or harmful. Thank the person for sharing their perspectives and how it changed your point of view if it did. If you humanize yourself and your opinions, as well as your conversation partner and their opinions, these conversations will then be less taxing and less dividing. Show how you can see the other person's side and that you've thought about their perspectives. Share where you agree and where you disagree. Try to mention specific facts as well as specific values and perspectives. Talk about the research and anywhere where you might have unsure positions. But when you talk about where you agree, don't make that the opening line to a rebuttal paragraph. When you go into these conversations, try not to assume that you'll be able to change the other person's mind. Put in as much effort as that relationship is worth. Treat the level of effort that you put in for a colleague or a coworker different from what you would put in for a spouse or close friend. And importantly, don't waste your energy and time on someone trying to get them to change their mind on whether a marginalized group deserves the same rights as everyone else. This will just cause you emotional harm, and if you're not close to that person, you're probably not going to be able to change their mind anyways. Obviously, if you feel up for it, go ahead, but don't feel like you have to get into these conversations with everyone if you're not in the right space to do so. People always try to bring up this argument that we're not even allowed to disagree anymore. But this can be really shallow, and it doesn't take into account that disagreements on different subjects have different impacts. Disagreeing on the TV show to watch is not going to cause anyone real harm. But disagreeing about gay marriage or reproductive rights will. Arguments on gender quotas are legitimate disagreements, but arguing whether women should be allowed in politics is not. The first one can be argued with both sides being moral, but the second cannot. You can't respectfully disagree whether women should be allowed to vote or be president. One disagreement is something that the majority of society has decided a long, long time ago that it's not moral to keep having these discussions because that opinion is harmful, aka red. The other is something people are still up in hands about, and these are okay to discuss. This would be green. The status of disagreement levels changes throughout history, and it's all dependent on the social context in time. The authors compared this to a stoplight, which I really liked. Red conversations that most people consider unethical to keep debating about should not be had, because this can actually harm other people, and it's not productive. Yellow disagreements, where it might be slightly controversial but it's not totally decided yet, you should err on the side of caution and proceed slowly and carefully. Do research into the subject before diving into it with anyone and everyone. If someone is upset with the conversation and thinks that it's a difference in morals as opposed to a difference in policies, don't keep going on with the conversation, especially if you're arguing with a marginalized group that's directly impacted by it. Green disagreements you can proceed with, but obviously just don't go speeding or driving recklessly. This is all just to say that free speech is necessary, but it should be respectful and educated, especially in these more yellow conversations. And remember, just show your work when you're disagreeing so they know that you've taken their opinions and their perspectives into account. Show you heard what they've said and try to respond appropriately with that in your mind.